All right, you guys. So today it's going to be a little bit of a longer video. We're going to talk about the different console generations, talk a little bit about the console wars, and how there was a video game crash in the 80s that, I'm surprised hasn't happened yet again today. So let's get into it. Mind you, there's 9 console generations, and I didn't start playing until about the third console generation where I was able to get my hands on our original Nintendo Entertainment System, NES. So let's talk about it. Here is our beautiful, beautiful tier list right here. We got Gen 1, 2, 3, so on until we hit Gen 9. Here is the graphic and the Wikipedia page that we have up talking about the different console generations. And of course, we are going to talk about the crash of the video game market in the 80s, which I'm really surprised hasn't started to happen again. So let's go. So we're going to start off obviously with Gen 1. And Gen 1 has the Magnavox Odyssey, the Pong, and the Telestar. So between those three, I'd say Pong is probably the most polarizing out of the three, even though growing up and going to thrift stores, I think people call it nowadays. I call it junk stores because you ain't got nothing but junk in them. I used to see the Odyssey and the Odyssey 2 all the time. And mind you, all these don't have every single console that you could potentially see for the generation. So the Magnavox Odyssey, Pong, and the Telestar, like I said, the biggest one's Pong, and that's the one that really blew up, and I'd say set gaming on its trend. And I give Gen 1 like a B tier only because, like I said, the biggest one to note is Pong. And it's just one of those things. You gotta give Pong its flowers. It did do amazing things at the time with the technology they had. Moving on to Generation 2, which is the Fairchild Channel F, the Atari 2600, which is the granddaddy of all of them from this generation, and the Mattel Intellivision. So, of course, the best thing is we can scroll down here and check them out. Me personally, I never heard the Fairchild Channel F. To me, this just looks like a knockoff. But the Atari 2600 is the big one that everybody had because you could go and you can buy all kinds of games that were in the arcades and play them on the Atari, like Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Pitfall. There were so many big games on the Atari 2600 that really made that I kind of think sets it apart from the first generation. Odyssey 2, like I said, I never played it. I saw it at the junk stores all the time. Same with the Intellivision and the Vision. I never even heard the Vision, truth be told. But Generation 2, only because it has like I think the B tier is just going to be like mid tier. I would say definitely B, followed by Gen 3. Gen 3 is where it's the 8-bit generation. This is where I started playing. My first console ever was a Nintendo back in the 90s, like early, like 94, I believe, is when I got my first Nintendo Entertainment System. They had, of course, the Sega Master System and the Atari 7800. I never played with the Atari 7800, but I've seen them in action. There was a bunch of really good games on it. But this is the 8-bit era, and this is where Nintendo itself really became Nintendo. Because before this, they were like, they manufactured playing cards. They would make cards so you could go and play spades or poker and fill in the blanks. And like I said, this really ignited the start of what I would say is one of the greatest console wars ever, and that's between Nintendo and Sega. And it didn't really pick up, I'd say, until the Genesis came out. So let's take a look. Gen 3, only because it has the original Nintendo in there. I'd say A tier because like Duck Hunt, that dog still haunts me in my dreams. So finally moving on to the fourth gen, 16-bit gen, which is insane to me to think that the third generation lasted until 2003. So it lasted for 20 years. Where the fourth gen, the 16-bit, went from 1987 to 2004, where you had bangers like the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, the TurboGrafx, which the TurboGrafx was an interesting one because it was like super high end, like super high end. I think it was like one of the most expensive ones that ever came to market. It doesn't have the price on here. Oh, great. But TurboGrafx, I remember seeing those, and where is it? Neo Geo. I know the Neo Geo for sure was super expensive. This was probably my second console I ever got. I don't know where my mom and dad got it from, but we used to play, I think it was Streets of Rage on it. And I think it was Streets of Rage. But I had a lot of fun with it. I was bad. My dad ended up giving it to somebody, but it was like $650 for a Neo Geo back in the day. Like I said, Neo Geo, one of the most expensive ones to ever be brought to market. But with this generation having the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, which right there was like, it solidified the console war between those two. I'm going to have to put Gen 4 in A tier as well. Followed by the fifth generation. Fifth generation was from 93 to 2006. Fifth generation's where I really like started making strides when it came to video games. This is the 32 and 64-bit era. With bangers like the Saturn. This is made by Sega. You got the Nintendo 64, and of course the juggernaut themselves, PlayStation. And if you guys didn't know, the PlayStation was actually even considered and brought to market because it was a failed venture between Sony and Nintendo that even brought the PlayStation to the market. It's just ridiculous to think that if it wasn't for Nintendo being like, you know what, we're going to go with Panasonic instead, we probably would have never had the PlayStation come to market and have bangers like we do today with The Last of Us and fill in the blank. The N64, you have such great titles like, the Mario 64, Donkey Kong Country. No, Donkey Kong Country is on the Super Nintendo. GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Turok was really big on the N64. This is one of the ones like people my age that are in their mid 30s just absolutely love. And then on top of that, I'd say the biggest thing Nintendo, the N64 really brought to the market was the variety of different colors and just being able to express yourself through your console. Like you could go out and buy a Pikachu N64 if you want. Definitely the fifth generation is going to squeak its way into the B tier. Sixth generation. Okay, so sixth generation, I'd say, has probably one of the biggest misses out there, and that is the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast, let's click on it. When it came to market, it was amazing. Like this thing, I remember going over to a kid's house I grew up with, and his mom bought him a Dreamcast, and just looking at the controller, the memory card, playing Max Steel, I think it was, and like Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio Future. It was like, oh my God. And mind you, it came to here in North America in 1999, almost a full year after it was released in Japan. And I believe it was discontinued in 2001. It's either 2001 or 2002 where it was discontinued. And then on top of that, it also had SegaNet, which was like it was like one of the first abilities to like play online. Where is it? But yeah, it was like Sega finally posted a profit 2003, but it did not last long enough. On top of that, the sixth generation, you got the PlayStation 2, you got the Xbox, and at the time, the GameCube was considered a massive flop, which blows my mind to think nowadays that the GameCube's a massive flop with how like the controller itself is so iconic, and the square box, and then you got Super Smash Brothers that came from it. You got, you know, a lot of really good Mario Karts that were on the GameCube. Like, so like I said, the biggest failure from this generation definitely Dreamcast. PlayStation 2 really cemented Sony in the PlayStation brand in the gaming sphere. You got the GameCube, which I think has some of the most iconic Nintendo games that ever came out on it. I know, unpopular opinion, I do like Super Mario Sunshine. Um, you got Smash Brothers. You got Mario. Luigi's Mansion. You know, freaking Egg Hatcher Billy, I think it is, or Billy the Egg Hatcher. My brother loved that game, and for whatever reason, that game nowadays is like $600. And then, of course, Xbox. In my opinion, Xbox really changed gaming, bringing Xbox Live to the market, allowing you to play against people. It blew my mind the first time I ever saw somebody playing against somebody that isn't even in the same house on an Xbox playing Halo and Halo 2. Definitely ridiculous when it comes to that stuff. So the sixth generation is definitely going to be at the front of A, but I'm saving the S tier for one category. Seventh generation. This is where, in my opinion, the market really narrowed. You went from having 4 brands to really 3. And on top of that, Nintendo's going to do what Nintendo does. Nintendo will release a console and it's going to sell because their IPs, intellectual properties, are not on other platforms. So if you want to play a Pokemon game, if you want to play, you know, a Mario game, you know, Metroid, fill in the blank, it's going to be on the Nintendo, whether the console's good or if it's garbage. Like, case in point, we'll get to it, the Wii U. In my opinion, the 7th gen, which started in 2005 to 2017, is hands down probably the greatest generation of consoles there ever was. And I'm only saying that because of the innovation that they had during this generation that allowed players to build off of Xbox Live. Sony ends up catching up with the PlayStation 3. Now, they had online capabilities with the PlayStation 2, but they weren't anywhere near as polished as they were with the PlayStation 3. The memories I built playing the Xbox 360 with my homies and playing Gears of War or playing, you know, Halo 3, just the amount of banger games on the Xbox 360 and the memories I built. Oh, and then like the real big one, the granddaddy of all gaming franchises, Call of Duty, really took off during the Xbox 360 era with the Modern Warfare franchise of it. Whoop, wrong way. In my opinion, the Xbox 360 era, PlayStation 3, and Wii, that is the one I'm giving the roses to. It's S-Class. Like, you cannot get any better than that. And the crazy thing is most people nowadays, with how fast technology moves, says that a console's lifespan should only be about 7 years. When you look at some of these older generations, I mean, granted, technology, the rate at which technology moves nowadays is lightning speed compared to Gen 1 from 72 to 76. And then the second generation from 76 to 83. And you have, what is it? Gen 4, according to this. Oh, these dates don't match up according to the other one. But like the third generation here from 83 to 2003, like they don't make them like that anymore. And then, you know, people will be like Red Ring of Death, yada yada yada. And I agree with you. The Red Ring of Death was terrible, but at the same time, in 2011, Sony had the network hack where the PlayStation Network went down for over a month. So the two big ones that are going against each other, Microsoft and Sony, had their problems during this generation. But I feel this generation really cemented and moved everything forward. So then we're going to move into the 8th generation. And the 8th generation is going to be the Wii U, the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. The best one from this is the Nintendo Switch. The one I played the most was the Xbox One. I bought a PlayStation 4, didn't really play much on it. The Nintendo Switch is actually still going strong today. It was launched in 2017. We're what, 8 years almost since the launch of Nintendo Switch, and it's still going strong with all of its, its intellectual properties that it holds. The thing of it is with the Nintendo Switch, it really changed the game because it's forcing the hands of the other two, because now you got, Sony that's out there trying to release something that you can play remotely your PlayStation on, and that you can remotely cloud compute your Xbox One on. And it's really Nintendo's innovations kind of forcing the hands of Sony and Microsoft to try to catch up. In my opinion, this generation right here single-handedly destroyed Xbox, because they came out and they're like, hey, we don't want you sharing games with your friends, so it's going to be locked to your account. PlayStation came out. They were like, this is our price. This is how you share games with your friends. On top of that, with how long the life cycle of the Xbox One was and the PlayStation 4, that really, really introduced, and I mean, the Xbox 360 era did it as well with the Red Ring of Death, so on and so forth. It really cemented mid-generation refreshes where they kind of bolster the power of the console to allow it to become better and do more things and make it easier for developers to release better games. But at the end of the day, this generation really fell flat, especially with the Wii U. I never bought a Wii U. This is like one of those lost consoles on me that I never got into. I know the Wii U store shut down a while ago, but it fell on its face. But it did lead to the Nintendo Switch. But this generation really kind of fell flat. And I'm going to put it in the C tier. It's not that good. Followed by this one, the 9th generation. And there's only two consoles that fall into the 9th generation. The Xbox Series X, S, PlayStation 5. I have a feeling when it comes to the 10th generation of consoles, there's only going to be two left. It's only going to be Sony and it's going to be Nintendo. Microsoft's going to eventually bow out, considering that they released the Xbox Series S, and it's much, much less powerful than the PlayStation 5 and the Series X. It's more online with where the 8th gen was. In my opinion, this one right here, it's going to fall. Gen 9 is going to fall into D. The biggest problem for this generation is there's no solid franchises, new franchises that came out during this time. I'd say between Gen 8 and Gen 9, at least with Gen 8, there was some new innovation, some new IPs, some new titles that came out. But this is where the 8th gen really started doing the remasters, the remakes, and then you move into the 9th generation, and a lot of the 9th generation is nothing but remasters, remakes. It's not that good. On top of that, Microsoft, like I said, Microsoft's basically folded, and they're going to go the route of Sega and just do software instead of hardware. Which leads me into my next point, which is the video game crash of 1983. I think the only big difference between 83 and today is the fact that 83, it was a market saturation of video game consoles. Today, it's going to be poor quality games, because every game nowadays is rushed to market. We'll patch it until it's good. I feel that with developers, Ubisoft, Activision just got bought up by Microsoft. The amount of layoffs there is, fill in the blank. The gaming market is going to hold steady, and of course, they're going to continue to have the success that they have today. But it's going to end up causing a recession, because it's going to crash. There's no way around it. It's going to crash eventually. And that's because of this. There's no, let's say, like, competition. That's what I'm looking for. Because now it's going to ultimately fall down and become Sony versus Sony. Because Microsoft's just going to make games. Nintendo is just like that weird kid that sits in the back of the room and does his own thing, but everybody knows who he is. And everybody likes him. That's Nintendo. Sony is like that cool kid that just can't miss. And there's people out there that, dick ride Sony for this. But in my opinion, the biggest thing is poor quality games is what's going to lead to the downfall of the gaming market. Let's go full screen. I want to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let me know if you feel like I'm right on some of these things or if I'm wrong, because I'm not wrong. I'm not. I've been playing games since 94. We're in 2025. We're 30 years removed since I started playing. I think that there has to be some innovation. There has to be something that's going to tip the gaming market to allow them to innovate again and have competition out there again instead of just cranking out the same Call of Duty, cranking out, Assassin's Creed, cranking out fill in the blank gaming franchise that is safe and makes you money even though it could be garbage. It definitely is not in a good spot right now. Definitely needs to start moving in a different direction to continue to innovate and have competition out there and release games that are passion projects instead of games that are going to appease the market, because a lot of these gaming developers are publicly traded on the stock market. At the end of the day, it's kind of sad to see that nothing of innovation has really come out. People will be like, oh, cloud gaming, oh, this, handheld gaming, hey, da, da, da. It's cool, dude, but we need some innovation. We need something. Anyways, you guys, don't forget to mash that like button, subscribe. Every little bit helps out the channel immensely. I know this is a long video. I usually try to keep it about 10 minutes. We're like more than double that right now. I just want to thank you guys so much for hanging out. It does mean a lot. Y'all take it easy. Have a great and wonderful day. And I'll catch you later. Bye.